Morning. This is Howie from Protect the Inlet. Do you want to go on camera as well? Sure.
I'm different. Hello.
Want to introduce yourself?
I'm Kate. I'm with EBC C350.
Yes.
Do a circle for the welcome.
So we're doing a circle for the welcome prayer. So I'm gonna step back a little bit and let them do the prayer. But we are right now at the West Ridge Marine Terminal, which is the marine terminal for the for this pipeline. I'm going to show you what's happening right now. There's a welcoming prayer going on, but there's also worker trucks and vans that have been blocked from entering. And so there's a prayer right now happening that's currently blocking work coming in. So we're going to step back and let people do the prayer so you can see actually what's going on. But yeah, so for those of you who are, so in the background you can actually see the trucks and the vans are backing up. RCMP in their yellow jackets have just arrived. And just here is the entrance to the property that's currently owned by Kinder Morgan. This is all going to be purchased by the federal government in a couple of months. Over here you can see some Kinder Morgan workers. They've been out recording folks as well. Doubtlessly they're going to be using the recordings to prosecute and try to get people who do get arrested at these events as much jail time as they can possibly get. For those of you who were watching the live stream yesterday, you can actually see that the smoke has cleared up a bit, so you can actually see the North Shore Mountains a little bit, but these mountains were completely covered up by smoke yesterday, so we couldn't actually see any of these mountains, any of these trees that you see in the background at all. So they're doing a prayer circle, and there's actually I saw somebody, a collared individual, which indicates there's a leader from Christian church who's here. In the background you can see the RCMPs watching and recording. And yeah, so otherwise this is, I believe, the 22nd or 23rd day of potentially arrestable actions that's been going on. This is day 2 of the August week of action that's occurring. Go to protecttheinlet.ca. That's protecttheinlet.ca if you want to know more information and to sign up for that. You can also donate from protecttheinlet.ca to help keep this movement going. If you can't make it here and you want to get involved, any amount really helps completely. We're out here through the generous donations of individuals like you, and anything you can do would be helpful in making sure that this resistance keeps going. So you can see in the back, in the yellow high-vis vests, are the RCMP officers. They are using things like iPads and stuff to record what's going on. And then in the background you can see there's some trucks and vans that have been stopped and that have been prevented from moving forward. If you're just joining us, we are at the marine terminal of what is currently the Kinder Morgan pipeline. It's a pipeline marine terminal that the federal government in Canada has announced that they were going to purchase. So Justin Trudeau back in May announced that he's going to be purchasing this pipeline for 4.5 billion Canadian dollars. So right now, folks are educating people about whether here. Some people here today may choose to risk arrest. There is currently an injunction on this space that's been granted by a judge named Affleck from the BC Supreme Court. Judge Affleck of the BC Supreme Court has given this private company the ability to arrest people on within X amount of meters of their property. So right now they're just training, they're educating people about what's happening, about if people who are interested in, who may be interested in getting arrested. Folks are educating people on what that means. And if people, are here just to support, that's all right as well. If you want to sign up, protecttheinlet.ca/act. There are actions happening all week. Tomorrow there's going to be an action in Nanaimo, British Columbia. The day after there's going to be an action in the evening on Thursday, and then then Friday and Saturday there will be more actions here. Some of those actions, there may be people who choose to get arrested, and those who do choose to get arrested will get trained. They will be educated as to what that means, what the implications are, what the risks are. And that's what they're doing right now. There are folks here, the organizers here, are educating people about what it means if they would choose to get to risk arrest by challenging this injunction that this pipeline company has. To get involved, go to protecttheinlet.ca. That's protecttheinlet.ca. Excuse me. There you can also, if you can't make it here, you can also, if you can't sign up and aren't able to RSVP, you can sign up, and you can also help donate as well. So if you're just joining us, we're in Burnaby, British Columbia. It is a suburb outside of Vancouver. This is traditional Coast Salish territory. It's unceded Coast Salish territory. And there are several people here who are currently being trained in the middle of the road. And while they're doing this, they're actually also blocking those trucks. You can see there's at least 2 miniature vans, as well as a large industrial truck, a large industrial vehicle that have now been stopped. In the background, you see RCMP officers. These are officers from the Royal Canadian Mounted Police in their high-vis yellow vests. You may see that, speaking with the guys in the high-vis yellow vests, there are 2 men wearing gray and black. They are also part of the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, but they are part of a separate community unit of some sort. If you're just joining us, we are in Burnaby, British Columbia. We're just outside of Vancouver, Canada. I'm just going to walk over and grab a battery. Sorry, I'm just going to quickly grab the battery here. Oh, it's already in my pocket. Interacting with the different bodies that will be here in a second. Just regarding phones, it is your choice if you would like to have your phone on you. We haven't yet seen the police take them throughout this training. The information that we give you is only based on. So right now, what's happening is these individuals, they just did an opening acknowledgement and a prayer. And what they are now doing is they're being trained So for those who may want to continue to risk getting arrested by challenging the injunction that Kinder Morgan has on the space right now, that they will be educated on what that means. If you've been following our live streams, if you were looking at our live stream from yesterday, you will notice that there is a marked difference in the background. That is because yesterday you couldn't see any of those hills or the mountains in the background. Yesterday, all of those mountains and trees in the background, those hills, were secluded by forest fire smoke. Right now, there was just over 550 last I checked wildfires burning in British Columbia. That doesn't include all the wildfires that are burning across the Pacific Northwest, also all the way down to California. In previous years, in previous weeks, the forest fire smoke that's been coming out of these wildfires that have been burning across the western half of Canada and the United States have gone as far east as places like Winnipeg. I've seen photos of Martian-like atmosphere conditions in places like Calgary and Edmonton. So RCMP is now coming up. You can actually see that there is they have this loudspeaker kind of machine, that dark machine down there. That machine has a pre-recorded message on it. We've seen it employed before in previous times when these challenges first occurred. The injunction that was granted by Judge Affleck of the BC Supreme Court for Kinder Morgan on behalf of the company had to be read out by RCMP officers. They now actually play a recording of that. The process is the injunction needs to be read out, or in this case, I suppose, recorded. The recording needs to be played. And then once the recording is played, they give out paper copies of the injunction. And then those who decide to stay risk arrest. Right now, those who are getting arrested face up to 14 days of jail time. Yesterday, there were 5 people arrested. Earlier this week, those who've been arrested last week were released from jail on good behavior. Those who were arrested and released from jail included some notable people, including Susan Lambert, who used to be the president of the British Columbia Teachers Federation, as well as Jean Swanson, who is a city council candidate for the city of Vancouver, and also the recipient of the Order of Canada, which is the country's highest civilian honor award that's given by the government. Those who've been arrested prior in the months since March 10th, when this phase of this actions began, included doctors and lawyers and software engineers, bus drivers, teachers, nurses, Air Force pilots, opera singers, artists. There were people who were Indigenous and non-Indigenous, new immigrants alike.
In the Supreme Court of British Columbia,
This is the recording.
Trans Mountain Pipeline, ULC plaintiff, and David Miviser, Bina Salamath, Mia Neeson, Corey Skinner, also known as Corey Skinner, Uni Urchin, also known as Jean Escueta, Arthur Brochiner, also known as Arthur Brochiner, Carl Perrin, Yvonne Raoul, Earl Peach, Sandra Ang, Ruben Garbanzo, also known as Robert Arbes, Gordon Carnwall.
If you're just joining us, we're in Burnaby, British Columbia. The noise, the sound that you hear in the background is a recording of the injunction that Kinder Morgan received from BC Supreme Court Judge Affleck.
On the application of the plaintiff Trans Mountain Pipeline, ULC, coming on for hearing.
This injunction needs to be fully read and then paper copy given before police here have the option of arresting people. You can actually see all the folks here in their high visibility vests. These are all members of the Royal Canadian Mounted Police. This gentleman here leaning against the pole, as well as that gentleman in the hard hat over there, are employees of Kinder Morgan, or at least been hired by Kinder Morgan to record. And doubtlessly the recordings are going to be used to try to, when in court, if these people do get arrested, to give these people the highest penalty possible. That's what Kinder Morgan wants.
So I want to introduce myself. I'm Chief Judy Wilson from the Union of BC Indian Chiefs. We represent over 110 First Nations in BC. We're standing on the unceded coastal First Nation, Tsleil-Waututh, Squamish, and lands here today. And we wanted to be able to say this is unceded territory of the coastal First Nations. And we want to be able to say we're protecting Mother Earth, and you're here today to be able to share those concerns together, to be able to stand together, to be able to protect Mother Earth, the land, and the waters against the Trans Mountain, Kinder Morgan, and Federal Pipeline. We have to stand together because we have to be able to share, get that message across Canada and around the Mother Earth, around the planet, to be able to say how we're standing for Mother Earth, and we're not going to continue to allow the destruction of Mother Earth through this pipeline and the emissions that they produce, and with the wildfires we see in global warming. It's very disturbing that the federal government continues to purchase the pipeline to be able to say we already had strong messages, we don't want this pipeline. But we had strong messages from the city of Victoria, from the city of Vancouver, from the city of Burnaby, from some of the other lower mainland cities that said no. We also had the Tsleil-Waututh people, the Watch House, saying no. We have the Interior saying no. We have many First Nations saying no to this pipeline. And we also have citizens that come out that represent, the municipalities and the communities saying no to this pipeline. It's really good to see everyone out here today because we have to be able to come together because the government still isn't getting that message that they need to hear, that this purchase of the pipeline is not in the best interest of Mother Earth. It's not in the best interest of Canadians. It's not in the best interest of anyone, especially our future generations yet to come. So the purchase of the pipeline is only aiding a continuation, of these major corporations, who think they don't have to listen to anyone. In the Interior, they're putting more anti-spawning maps down. They were taken out, removed. How can corporations continue this practice? And we're in the fourth cycle of our salmon, where our salmon need to come and spawn in our creeks, and they're putting anti-spawning maps down so that they can put their pipeline and do their construction. That's not acceptable. They don't have to listen to any laws. And here today they're saying we're obstructing. No, Kinder Morgan, Trans Mountain, federal government, you're the ones that are obstructing Mother Earth. You're the ones that are not listening to the laws of the land. We need to be able to ensure that our salmon continue to spawn in those very spawning grounds where they're putting the anti-spawning mats.
or
we'll
knowingly have
continue to
contravened
do
the
what we have
provisions
to
of this
do
order.
because we're
For the
doing it
sake
for
of
Mother
clarity,
Earth.
such
We're
police
doing it
officer
for the
retains
water.
his or her
We're doing it
operational
for all of
discretion as to
creation.
whether or not
We're
to
doing
arrest
it so,
or
to
remove
ensure
any
that our
person
younger
pursuant to
generation,
this order.
our children and grandchildren have a
Any
future.
police officer who arrests or
There is
removes
not a
any
future
poor
with the
person
pipeline.
pursuant to this order
It's
is
only
hereby
monetary,
authorized to
and the
A,
only 1%
release that person
are
from arrest
benefiting from
upon
that
the police
pipeline.
officer being
It's not
satisfied
us.
that the person
It's
will
not
no
the
longer
average
contravene
person
the provisions of
that
this
walks
order.
the earth that's
B,
going to benefit
release that
anything.
person from arrest upon
The
the person
pipeline
agreeing in
is only
writing to
benefiting
not
those
breach this order and
that
to appear before
1%,
this
and we
court
can't
at such a
allow
time
that.
and place as may be
And we
fixed
have to be
for
able
the purpose of being
to
proceeded
continue
against
to
for
do the
contempt of
work
court
that we do
or for fixing a
and
date for such a
educate
proceeding.
others and share
C,
this
where
message
such a person
because
has
it's a strong
refused to give a
message.
written
So
undertaking pursuant to
even if
paragraph
there's a
7B
few that get
above,
arrested
or where in
today,
the
there will be
circumstances the
another
police
few
officer
hundred standing there to
considers it
replace them.
appropriate
And
to
we're
bring
going to
forthwith
continue that
such a person
because
before
I
this court
understand
at the
there is
Supreme Court
doctors,
Registry in
there's
Vancouver or any such
religious
other place
faiths from
or in
all
any such manner
denominations
as the
standing
court may
together.
direct for the
There's
purpose of
First
being
Nations
proceeded against for
standing
contempt of
together.
court.
Youth
Or
are
for
starting
fixing
to
a
come
time
out
for
more
such
and more. They're
proceedings,
standing
or
together here
D,
today
detain
because
such
they
person
know
until
what we're
such
doing
time
is
until they can be
right.
brought
They
before
know
this
what
court.
we have to do is important. It's so important to Mother Earth. It's so important to our future generations. We're willing to do whatever we have to do to be able to continue that work. What the federal government is doing is bailing out a company that was already having problems. And the federal government cannot continue to bail out these multi-corporations because all of the dollars they're investing is each one of the dollars from each person in Canada, but they're investing it in a bad investment. That bad investment's going to translate into more global warming and climate change. And that's what the people are saying we don't want. We don't want continued destruction of Mother Earth. And they're violating all of our human rights today. They're violating our human rights because we have a right to be able to say and be concerned. And they're using their laws against us and violating our human rights, which is not acceptable. What we're trying to do is build a better earth, a better world for all of mankind. Not where capital corporations and the federal government and RCMP come out here to enforce their jurisdiction. What about the coastal people? What about Tsleil-Waututh's jurisdiction? We just heard the protocols. If we lived by those protocols, this world would be a better place for us all. We need to be able to ensure that there is a future. There is no future with this pipeline. There is absolutely no way that pipeline represents a future for our Canadian people, our First Nations, or our children and those grandchildren yet to come. And we'll continue to do this, and we'll continue to pray together. I want to thank everyone for the circle prayer this morning. I want to thank those that have the drum song to open up so our ancestors could be with us today. I want to be able to thank for the smudge and the prayers. This was all done in a good way. And once we continue to do these things in a good way that our ancestors and the Creator showed us to do, we'll be able to stand in solidarity, and we'll be able to stand in strong and continue to hold that line. We have to hold that line no matter where it is because it involves the very future and life that we need as a people. We're all one. We're all one together. And we have the United Nations Declaration that's being, the government is saying that they're going to implement. Is this the way they're implementing the United Nations Declaration? Is this the way they're going to respect human rights? Is this the way they're treating citizens of a country that is supposed to be the best in the world? Is this how Trudeau is going to say he is implementing the United Nations Declaration? Shame. And also, you know, if we're standing together and saying we're doing reconciliation with the First Nations, with Indigenous people of Canada, is this the way to do it? Shame. And we're supposed to have all of our, be able to have a say on the land. And when a huge percentage of people are saying no to the pipeline, why is the federal government not listening to us? Shame. And also the cities, the lower mainland cities said no to this pipeline and no to the continuation of dirty fossil fuel. Why is that continuing?
Shame.
And why, when we're saying we want a greener future, we want greener energy alternatives, why are they investing in dirty fossil fuel?
Shame.
And why did you all come out here today?
Stop the pipeline.
Stop the pipeline. And be able to stand together. We need to be able to say, you know, we were heard today. We would need to be able to say, even if we go to court today, that message is going to be carried in court. It's going to be carried to Ottawa. It's going to be carried to all the four corners of the earth, because everyone is watching us. Everyone is knowing what's happening, what the federal government, the RCMP, and all of the Kinder Morgan and the shareholders are doing to us. There's a message we need to say to the shareholders in Calgary at the end of the month here, and that needs to be a strong message that even though they're selling their shares, they still own the assets and they're still liable for whatever happens here in BC and to the water and to our orcas and to the salmon and all of the water beings. They need to know that there is people that are opposing this. They're trying to say it's only a handful, it's a few, but it's not. Because I've been on many front lines and I've seen the resistance. I've seen that they're being able to say no to this pipeline. So we have to be able to speak loudly. We have to be able to speak clearly. We have to know in the consciousness of our mind and in our heart, we're saying no to this pipeline. And it doesn't matter how many of us they throw into the courts. It doesn't matter how many of us they try to remove. There'll be many, many more filling those lines across to say no to this pipeline.
Yeah. Woo. Woo. Thank you.
So if you're just joining us, we're in Burnaby, British Columbia. I'm just speaking. Did you want to say something? We're live on Facebook right now. You want to just do a quick introduction for those who just joined us?
Chief Judy Wilson from the Union of BC Indian Chiefs. I'm from the chief for Nisconnet of the Secwepemc people, and we're in the territory we come from. It's the pipeline crosses 513 kilometers. And our territory is unceded, and the title is held collectively by our people who are the proper title holders. And Canada is ignoring that. They do not have the consent of our people, the collective title holders, and also they're ignoring that many of the First Nations here, the Tsleil-Waututh, the Squamish, that are opposed to the pipeline. And also they have many others in the interior, Coldwater and Kanakabar, that are opposing the pipeline. The thing that they're not understanding too is there's also the city of Victoria, the city of Vancouver, and the city of Burnaby, and some other lower mainland municipalities that are also opposing the pipeline. So that's a big percentage of that pipeline that's opposed to it. So I think what the message to the federal government is stop bailing out these companies, for one thing. The second thing is stop the investment, stop the purchase of this national pipeline, because it doesn't have they're trying to say it has the best interest of our citizens, and many of our citizens are standing up and saying no, they do not want this pipeline, and it does not serve the interest of the Canadian public, nor does it serve the interest of our First Nations people. It's 1% of these companies coming in and continuing their destruction of Mother Earth and destruction of the water in the interior. They're trying to place more anti-spawning mats in. Some were removed last year, and this year's our big salmon cycle run. The big return every 4 years, and if they put those anti-spawning mats in, they're going to disrupt the whole spawning cycle for the salmon to lay their eggs. And I don't know any company in the world that should be allowed to do that type of destruction. Never mind, introducing carrying, bitumen oil and further destructing. There's been spills, and they minimize it. But those are real information we need to get out there to say this is what's really going on, and this should not, be allowed. And they're continuing continuing an injunction and they're continuing the arrest of our people. You know, they're making it into something criminal where it's not. It's peaceful. We're standing up for our human rights. They're actually violating the United Nations Declaration, and the very thing that they're trying to say they're going to introduce into Canada and to implement, and they're actually violating that today. I'm witness to that, and I'm seeing that, and it is not acceptable for the federal government to be heavy-handed in this way to our people in Canada and our average citizens in the public. It's not acceptable, and I'm hoping this does reach out to around globally, because I think that message has to say this is what's happening to our people. This is what's happening when we stand up to, you know, these huge companies that, you know, are coming in, and it doesn't matter who's the owner of that pipeline. They have liabilities, they have risk, and they have huge opposition, and they keep trying to say and minimize it, but it's true. You can see here today we have people from different faiths and religions are standing on the line here. We have many First Nations from different parts of the country, and we also have people that are, you know, just ordinary citizens coming out here today. And it'll continue to increase until, you know, Canada and the federal government halts their purchase of this pipeline.
Great, thank you very much. So that was Chief Judy Wilson from the Union of BC Indian Chiefs.
Jim is going to get arrested.
Okay, so hold on, we're going to watch this.
This is for you, Chief. Yeah, we couldn't wait. Break on song.
So, sir, contempt of breach of injunction. Can you come with me over here, please? We're just going to go down this path right here.
Jim has been one of the spiritual leaders of this movement, who's regular up here.
So we're just going to go one. Thank you.
Love you. Love you, Elder.
He's an elder and sun dancer, and he's now being processed. Now being processed. Faces about at least possibly up to 14 days of jail time. Those will all depend on the judge. The judge who's been presiding over all of these cases so far is named Affleck, Judge Affleck.
Hello. Yeah, sorry about that. I don't know why we would help the mainstream.
So the judge who's been presiding over these, his name is Affleck. And sorry, I'm just gonna grab. Yeah, the judge who's been presiding over these, his name is Affleck. Previously, he used to work. He's an appointment to the BC Supreme Court by Stephen Harper, and in the past, he actually used to represent Big Tobacco. And so all of the legal proceedings in the BC Supreme Court regarding energy and this pipeline actually go through him. And so the injunction which over 200 people have been arrested challenging, was granted originally by Judge Affleck. And all the people who defy the injunction will actually be whether or not the judgment on whether or not they actually have defied the injunction and whether or not they get jail time will be heard by the same judge, Judge Affleck, as well. So you can see the level of respect this elder has had on people. I've got to know him very well over these past months. I did not know he was planning on getting arrested today. And by getting arrested today, he faces possibly up to 2 weeks of jail time. There have been at least 12 people jailed so far. Those who get arrested today will get a court date in the months to come. Last week there were, I believe, 7 people who were given jail time, but they were actually arrested on June 30th. They were released. 2 of those who were released from jail. Those who were released included Gene Swanson, who was an Order of Canada, as well as Susan Lambert, who was former head of the BC Teachers Federation. The elder here is a sun dancer. He's spent a lot of time up on the watch house. Every time I'm up there, at least more than half the times I'm up there, he's usually there as well. And he's also been one of the spiritual leaders of a lot of these actions as well. So if you go in, look up, go in the video section of Coast Protectors, and if you look up the videos that have been posted there of these live streams, you'll see his face in a bunch of these. So he's fully aware of what's going on. But lots of people are like him. They're very interested in, they want to make sure that they're So the elder here, he's been active in community work since at least in the 70s and 80s. He's been working on issues of homelessness and access to housing for a very long time. In Vancouver, there's a development here called Woodwards, which developed over a part of the city, which helped was a gentrifying force in one of the poorest postal codes in the city, and he was very instrumental in that battle. I've actually seen a lot of he actually brought up photos from the fight of Woodwards and up to the mountain, and they've been really inspiring to watch. If you're just joining us, we are in Burnaby, British Columbia. We're just outside of Vancouver. Currently being processed is an elder. He's been he's a sun dancer, one of the spiritual leaders that have been the foundation of this organization, the foundation of this movement. And he is currently being processed and faces up to 14 days of jail time. Jim has been stalwart in social movements since the 1970s. Quite a prominent activist in the fight against poverty and ensuring that those with few resources have what they need to live and survive. So he was one of the folks who were active in the fight at Woodward's here in the city of Vancouver. So you can see how much respect he gets. A lot of the folks here who have been watching and observing these arrests have actually followed Jim to the boundary here, beyond which the RCMP is using to as a mustering space. So we're going to walk back to the site where there still are people who are challenging the injunction, I believe. So let's going to go back and take a look. So it looks as if they're about to arrest another elder here.
That was good. Yeah, that was good.
So right now there are. Excuse me, so right now there looks as if they'll be arresting. A couple of the elders here. Sorry. So for the first time that I've seen so far, some of the elders who have been the foundation of this are being arrested. They're likely going to be charged with is breaking the injunction like everyone else here. The court has granted an injunction for anybody who stands in this space. And so those who get arrested today face possibly up to 14 days of jail.
Wichita, do ya, do ya, do ya. Wichita, do ya, do ya, hey. Wishatanea, hey, hey. Wishatanea, hey, hey. Wishatanea, hey, hey. Wishatanea, hey, hey. Wichita, do ya, do ya, do ya. Wichita, do ya, do ya. Wichita, do ya, do ya, do ya. Wichita, do ya, do ya, hey. Ah, Wishatanea, hey, hey. Wishatanea, hey, hey. Wishatanea, hey, hey. Wishatanea, hey, hey. Wichita, do ya, do ya, do ya. Wichita, do ya, do ya, hey. Wichita, do ya, do ya, do ya. Wichita, do ya, do ya, hey. Oh, Wishatanea, hey, hey. Wishatanea, hey, hey. Wishatanea, hey, hey. Wishatanea, hey, hey. Wichita, do ya, do ya, do ya. Wichita, do ya, do ya, hey. Wichita, do ya, do ya, do ya. Wichita, do ya, do ya, hey. Wishatanea, hey, hey. Wishatanea, hey, hey. Wishatanea, hey, hey. Wishatanea, hey, hey. Wichita, do ya, do ya, do ya. Wichita, do ya, do ya, hey. Wichita, do ya, do ya, do ya. Wichita, do ya, do ya, hey. Wishatanea, hey, hey. Wishatanea, hey, hey. Wishatanea, hey, hey. Wishatanea, hey, hey. Wichita, do ya, do ya, do ya. Wichita, do ya, do ya, hey. Wichita, do ya, do ya, do ya. Wichita, do ya, do ya, hey. Wishatanea, hey, hey. Wishatanea, hey, hey. Wishatanea, hey, hey. Wishatanea, hey, hey. Wichita, do ya, do ya, do ya. Wichita, do ya, do ya, hey. Wichita, do ya, do ya, do ya. Wichita, do ya, do ya, hey. Wishatanea, hey, hey. Wishatanea, hey, hey. Wishatanea, hey, hey. Wishatanea, hey, hey. Wichita, do ya, do ya, do ya. Wichita, do ya, do ya, hey. Wichita, do ya, do ya, do ya. Wichita, do ya, do ya, hey. Wishatanea, hey, hey. Wishatanea, hey, hey. Wishatanea, hey, hey. Wishatanea, hey, hey. Wonka Tonka, Tonka Shayla, Wonka kuelo, pila maya ye, pila maya yelo, hey ya hey yo. Wonka tonka tonka shela, Wonka tonka tonka shela, pila maya yelo, hey ya hey yo. Chanu pa waka cha maya kuelo, hey ya hey yo. Pila maya yelo, hey ya hey yo. We chose anewa maya kuelo, pila maya ye, pila maya yelo, hey ya hey yo. Chanu pa waka cha maya kuelo, hey ya hey yo. Pila maya yelo, hey ya hey yo. We chose anewa maya kuelo, pila maya ye, pila maya yelo, hey ya hey yo. Wonka tonka tonka shela, Wonka tonka tonka shela, pila maya yelo, hey ya hey yo. Chanu pa waka cha maya kuelo, hey ya hey yo. Pila maya yelo, hey ya hey yo. We chose anewa maya kuelo, pila maya ye, pila maya hey ya hey yo. Chanu pa waka cha maya kuelo, hey ya hey yo. Pila maya yelo, hey ya hey yo. We chose anewa maya kuelo, pila maya ye, pila maya yelo, hey ya hey yo.
Man in the Gray is an RCMP officer.
Our people have done ceremonies on the land for millennia. Our people believe in the prayers to Creator. Our people believe in Mother Earth. Our people believe in the water and the salmon and the orcas. We are protecting Mother Earth. He is praying in a sacred Sundance. He is praying to our Creator to help our people. He is praying for a better world for our children and our grandchildren. He is putting himself right directly in connection to the Creator to pray for deepest prayers and drum songs and the smut and the medicine and the eagle feathers and the drums. The medicines are here in the circle with us. He is praying to the ancestors to be with us. He is praying for the Creator to be with us. He is praying for that strength. He is praying for that wellness to our people and the land, to protect the land from the pipelines, to protect the land from the dirty fossil fuel oil and against tar sand oil. He's praying for all of us in this sacred circle. And we don't want the federal government to continue to purchase the pipeline because that is not in the interest of our people. Our grandmothers acknowledge the prayers here today, the matriarchs of the land. Our ancestors are acknowledging us here today in the circle. Keep your prayers strong. Keep your prayers and the drum songs going, as we're praying for him and what he's doing for us today, but also for his Creator to be with us and the ancestors to walk with us. We need that strength, and we need that to continue doing what we're doing, because we're not doing it for ourselves. We're doing it for our children and our grandchildren yet to come, because we want a planet that has healthy water, a healthy Mother Earth. We want to be able to say we also can protect our people this way. From our Secwepemc people, we acknowledge what he is doing in this prayer circle today. We acknowledge the drum singers, we also the songs and the medicines. And we acknowledge the Tsleil-Waututh and the coastal people here with the unceded territory. Cooksjam from all of our grandmothers and all of our people. Cooksjam.
Stacy in any way. Nice, they get paid by the hour. They should be happy.
So Stacy's been out here for about an hour now. It looks like the RCMP is going to try to forcibly move him. stand back and start narrating again. For the past hour, this man named, his name's Stacy, he's an elder who's been one of the foundational spiritual leaders of this movement that's been going on at the Watch House and against this pipeline. Him and Jim, who's another elder, were arrested. Stacy, by himself, stood, danced, and stood in the way of work at the Westridge Marine Terminal here for just over an hour. Nothing but song and spirit. And so for those of you who've been just watching here and trying to figure out what's been going on, we are at the Westridge Marine Terminal just outside of Burnaby, British Columbia. This is the final point for this Trans Mountain pipeline currently owned by Kinder Morgan that Justin Trudeau wants to buy for billions and billions of taxpayer dollars against the consent of Coast Salish peoples here. If this pipeline is purchased by Trudeau, and his plan is to actually increase the volume of the pipeline by doubling, by twinning the pipeline, it would actually triple the amount of oil and gas going through it, tar sands bitumen from northern Alberta, and it would actually increase the number of tankers out in the waters out here 700%. Meanwhile, in the background, just to my right, where you can usually see the North Shore Mountain, there's a very thick haze. And that haze comes from over 550 wildfires that are burning across BC, plus more in the United States. As this is probably on track to be I believe last I saw, the 4th hottest year on record. The 3 previous hottest years on record were the 3 previous years. For the first time that we know of, there's been massive forest fires in the Arctic. The effects of all this wildfire smoke has been seen as far away as Winnipeg, in places like Edmonton and Calgary, places in the interior, places like Kamloops. They've been seeing, in places like interior northern BC, they've seen atmospheric conditions in the middle of the day that represents an evening on Mars, quite literally. A reddish haze descending on these communities in the middle of the day, obscuring sunlight. Air quality worse than in some of the worst air quality cities in the world, like Shanghai and Beijing, but this time in North America. If you want to join, go to protecttheinlet.ca. We are on day 2 of a week of action here. Tomorrow in Nanaimo at the Nanaimo Convention Center, there will be a meeting of Justin Trudeau and his cabinet ministers. So if you're in Nanaimo, British Columbia, or if you're around Nanaimo, BC, there is a gathering and an action of those opposing Justin Trudeau's purchase of this pipeline. By buying this pipeline, Justin Trudeau is implicating every person who pays taxes and making us all owners of a pipeline that does not have the consent of Coast Salish nations, that does not have the consent of First Nations up and down the pipeline route. It does not have the consent of cities like Burnaby, like cities like Vancouver. It does not have the consent of tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, and millions of others. And it does not have the consent of the people here, including Stacy, the elder currently being processed by the Royal Canadian Mounted Police. day 2 of a week-long week of action that started yesterday and ends on Saturday. Tomorrow, the week of action will take us to Nanaimo, British Columbia, where Justin Trudeau and his cabinet ministers are having a meeting at the convention center. So people opposed to this pipeline and Justin Trudeau's purchase of this pipeline will be meeting at 11:30, likely at the main entrance of the Nanaimo Convention Center on Gordon Street and Museum Way. Thursday evening, there is a fundraiser by by some of Justin Trudeau's members of Parliament. His finance minister, Bill Morneau, is expected to be here. There is a chance that Justin Trudeau himself may show up as well. So there will be an action on Thursday evening in downtown Vancouver. On Friday, artists will be here at the Westridge Marine Terminal. Leading an action against this pipeline. And on Saturday, Canadian authors, will be here standing up against this pipeline. Out here for about 2 hours. Stacy, the elder who's currently being processed by the RCMP, stood, danced, and prayed for an hour by himself, supported by all the people here. Joining us, we're in Burnaby, British Columbia. We're just outside of Vancouver. This has been a pretty emotional hour for a lot of the folks here, including myself, who've been involved with these actions since March. The elder currently being processed, his name is Stacy, has been arrested by the Royal Canadian Mounted Police for violating the injunction against Kinder Morgan facility here at Westridge Marine Terminal. the terminus point of the pipeline and where the tar sands from the pipeline is placed onto oil tankers. If this pipeline is expanded as Justin Trudeau is planning, with the billions and billions of taxpayer dollars Justin Trudeau is planning on using, the number of oil tankers out here is going to septuple, which is 700% increase. If you want to take part, go to protecttheinlet.ca. If you want to take part in the rest of this week of action, protecttheinlet.ca/act. Tomorrow morning at 11:30, there will be a meeting in Nanaimo, British Columbia. People will be standing up in opposition to Justin Trudeau and his cabinet ministers who will be meeting in the city tomorrow morning. That will be at the Nanaimo Convention Center at 11:30 by the main doors. Thursday evening there will be a action against at a fundraiser for the Federal Liberal Party. Friday and Saturday there will be actions back here in West Ridge Marine Terminal led by artists and authors. By being arrested today, Stacey risks up to 14 days in jail. Earlier this week, about 7 people who were jailed fighting this pipeline were released on an early condition because of good behavior. Those who were released from jail after spending less than their 7-day sentence, 4 days of their 7-day sentence, included the head of the BC, the former head of the BC Teachers Federation, Susan Lambert, as well as Jean Swanson, who is a candidate for the Vancouver City Council and a member and a recipient of the Order of Canada.